Welcome to Revival Radio TV. I'm Gene Bailey. Glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about American government. Greg, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And being a part. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, get ready. Here we go. As we dive into the ideas of government, the complex world of how we run things, and we think about what actually makes a good government, one thing becomes clear, Greg, we must have a solid system that lets everyone have a say. Having a government where people can freely participate is crucial, and that means setting some rules, a way for everyone to have their say and make things happen. Now, for those of you at home, we both have copies of the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights here. So when we think about great examples of governance in the scope of history, it's hard to overlook the Constitution. It's a shining example of how to do things right, standing strong still through all these kinds of challenges over the years. Governments have come and gone throughout history, each trying to find the right balance between power and freedom, but none have stuck around quite like the American Constitution. So, Greg, what are some of the things that make the Constitution such an esteemed document?
Well, for one, it's the bedrock. It is the foundation that everything is built upon. It's the guiding force that shapes our collective efforts. But really and truly, before you could have the Constitution, you had to have this one, the Declaration of Independence, right alongside it. As you read through the Declaration, and we've done that before, we see a narrative that moves from broad ideas to specific complaints. And it mirrors the process of moral decision-making, starting with the big principles, moving toward a practical application. So the Declaration showcases humanity's ability to reason morally. Key to the Declaration's story is the idea of a divine providence, the acknowledgement of God as our source of moral authority, binding all of the signers to this document in commitment to each other and to God. Gene, they covenanted together. It's a partnership. The Declaration is a call for action, a rallying cry for people from different walks of life, united by a shared goal. Partnership breaks down when we don't have the same goal anymore. So from the halls of Philadelphia to the battlefields of the Revolution, these individuals risk everything for the cause of liberty, driven by a common vision of a more fair and more just society.
The fundamental principle that separating the legislative, executive, and judicial powers is essential to preserving liberty and preventing tyranny.
The Constitution clearly states the formal structure of our governing principles that have shaped who we are as a nation. It worked because of the checks and balances. One of these checks and balances is the separation of power. So how does that really work, Greg?
Here's how it worked. The founding generation believed that the separation of powers, it was absolute. It was so vital because it prevents one person, example, the president, from gaining too much control. Remember, they had just come out of a monarchy of a king, a tyranny of a king. Here's the breakdown. The Constitution splits powers among three branches: Congress, the president, and the Supreme Court. All of that was taken from the Bible. This prevents any one branch from dominating. Each branch has the ability to check the others, maintaining a balance. Why was this complex system so crucial? Because it safeguards the rights promised in the Declaration of Independence. It stops a president from becoming a dictator. And where did they get the idea? Like I said a moment ago, three texts are key: The Spirit of Laws, John Adams' The Thoughts of Government, and John Madison's Federalist 51. A French philosopher residing in England was greatly influenced by English political system and separation of powers in ancient Rome, leading him to advocate for a similar system of government in its work, The Spirit of the Laws. He emphasized the need to separate powers to prevent tyranny, and he argued that power should be a check on power. Listen to that. With distinctive legislative, executive, and judicial branches. Now, Adams will echo this, warning against putting all power in just one body. He proposed a system of check and balances, including an independent judiciary. Madison then, in Federalist 51, outlined how the Constitution's structure prevents abuse of power. He stressed the importance of competing branches and checks on government. For Washington and our founders, the separation of powers was crucial to safeguarding our liberty. It ensures that no one person or branch holds too much control, maintaining a government of laws, not of men.
A pure democracy holds within it the dangers of mob rule, whereas in a republic, the representatives act as a throttle on the whims of the mob and can protect life, liberty, and property.
What did we do, Greg, as a fledgling nation to preserve our precious liberty in the hands of those governing, to keep it from slipping back into sovereign rule?
Okay, well, central to that conversation is the concept of representation as a foundation of legitimate authority. In stark contrast to the idea of divine right of kings to rule, the American idea sets up the idea of the consent of the people. Gene, it's right here on this page. You can see it. We, the people,
right,
in boldface. In other words, the government only rules with the consent of people it governs. In England, after the successful English Civil War in the 17th century that was led, by the way, by the Puritans, in order to establish a godly government, they agreed to make the power of the people in the Parliament as a form of representative government. They gave Parliament the power of the purse and taxation, but the king still had too much power. So the executive branch of the Georgian England had the air of representative government, but it wasn't written in a constitution. It wasn't written, which reminds me, Gene, of Habakkuk. Write the vision.
Right.
Make it plain so that everybody can read it. We have a copy of it today. And when we talk about the English Constitution, no written document was ever penned, and more of an oral agreement that this is how we do things. But it was too dangerous for our founders. They wanted a fixed set of written laws with a Bill of Rights that can only be amended by the lengthy due process with a majority agreement. At the heart of the American Constitution lies the ethics of representation, a safeguard against the encroachment of despotism or tyranny. In the hallowed halls of the Constitutional Convention, the framers' collective wisdom gave birth to a novel concept that of elected representatives endowed with the sacred trust of their own constituents.
And it lasted for 250 years.
It has lasted that long. On the flip side of the argument is the tyranny of the masses. The founders were concerned with the majority rule or mob rule. That's why we have a representative minority and not a majority, rather, a representative majority, not a pure democracy. You hear people say that all the time, that we're a democracy. We're not. We're a representative republic.
Correct.
The small states like Rhode Island were worried about the large states like New York having a permanent monopoly of rule simply because of population. So the genius idea was to separate the Congress into two houses. The Congress would grow as the population grew, and they would add representatives. And then the balance to that would be that the Senate would be limited to 2 senators from each state so that small states would have an equal voice in the representative process. In essence, the Constitutional Compact embodies the very idea that people are sovereign but do not govern, but the government governs the people at the permission of the people, because the people are represented by elected representatives. Constitutional document that I hold in my hands right here, a copy of it, enshrines liberty of the individual in the Bill of Rights. It's a bastion of liberty, a protection against the excess of authority. It stands as a testament to the idea of liberty and, as they said, inalienable rights not granted by a king or by Washington, D.C. or a government, but given to us by only one, given to us by God.
We do not have government by the majority. We have government by the majority who participate.
So, Greg, how can we uphold the democratic principles of participation in this transition of power as it was written in the Constitution in this election year?
Well, to truly grasp the significance of elections, the peaceful transition of power, you need to rewind the critical moments in American history. Take the first real election of 1800 between Adams and Jefferson, a game changer for the American democracy. It marked a shift where ballots, not bullets, became the tool for political change. It ushered in an era of governance defined by popular will and electoral choice. Abraham Lincoln's remarks in 1861 that ballots had replaced bullets captured how participation reshaped our government. But getting to this point wasn't very easy. The Revolutionary War was a test for our young nation's strength. With soldiers facing immense challenges and odds, despite the chaos, leaders like George Washington rallied the nation to victory. So after the war, a whole new set of problems now arises. Madison's critique of the political system shed light on the young republic's vulnerabilities. Here's where we are weak. States struggled to support the federal government, and economic uncertainty threatened the nation's stability. So against that backdrop, the Constitutional Convention of 1787 was the ray of hope, a chance to salvage this American experience. Led by visionaries like Madison and Hamilton, the delegates worked tirelessly to create a constitution that would unite our nation. The road to ratification, it was not smooth. It was very bumpy. Some states like New York and Massachusetts resisted, revealing deep divisions within our own republic. Remember when they said unite or die? Well, we were having to now unite to be a country. But through compromise and collective effort, delegates eventually ratified a groundbreaking document that shaped our future. Comparing the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution gives you insight into our nation building. The Declaration has lofty ideals. It's a rallying cry. It's a cause for us to fight for. It's a cause against tyranny. In contrast, the Constitution is a practical guide for governance. It's a blueprint to turn ideas now into reality.
If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, no external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. But in a government which is to be administered by men over men, you must first enable the government to control itself.
All right, so Greg, how does the Constitution promote limited government for our best interest?
Okay, in thinking about the Constitution's significance, you have a profound question here. What is the true extent of its authority, and how far does it reach into the realm of governments? Let me give you some examples. The Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, the National Institutes of Health, NIH, while serving critical roles in public health and safety, pose a real constitutional dilemma. We lived through it in 2020. By a strict interpretation of the Constitution, these federal agencies appear unconstitutional. In Alexander Hamilton's perspective, he argued in favor of the agency, citing, quote, the General Welfare Clause. Ensuring public welfare is a noble pursuit, one that resonates with the core tenets of governance. However, if the Constitution intended to grant boundless authority for the pursuit of a general welfare, why list specific powers for the federal government? The complexities of modern society present compelling arguments for expansive government intervention. You cannot ignore the pressing need for food safety regulations, public health initiatives, and environmental protections. Yet, you also have to grapple with the tension between addressing society's needs and preserving constitutional integrity.
And not creating a bureaucratic monster at the same time.
And I think we've experienced, to be honest with you, a bureaucratic monster.